If we take a look at the numbers that have just been released by the Australian Bureau of Statistics for the June quarter, inflation data has come in slightly lower than expected on the inflation read. We have the quarterly headline number at 0.7%. That has taken the headline inflation read over the year to June to 2.1%, down from 2.4%. But the RBA itself is very focused on the underlying read, which is the trimmed inflation reading. We're looking to see if it has matched the RBA's forecasts, and it has indeed. The quarterly read for the trimmed mean has come in at 0.6%, which is essentially bang on where the RBA thought it would be, and we're seeing the annual read for the trimmed mean at 2.7%. These are in line with the RBA's forecasts and open the door to an August rate cut. So, Kath, as I was just saying, these are pretty much as expected, which is probably going to take some of the pressure off the RBA at the meeting.
Yeah, because we know the last meeting they failed to cut rates, which disappointed many. But Michelle Bullock saying it was all about the timing. What do you make now of these numbers and the expectations of a future rate cut?
Yeah, it is really interesting because if we give some context to that July meeting, markets were betting around a 97% chance or more that the RBA would cut interest rates based on the monthly inflation read, which had that all-important underlying measure that we've just talked about back in the target band for the first time in quite a long while. And of course, the RBA wants to see inflation between 2 and 3%, but it really wants it sustainably back around that midpoint of about 2.5% and comfortably there before it starts really taking aggressive cuts to interest rates. Michelle Bullock at the July meeting says she wasn't comfortable with that monthly read. She thought there were some components that might point to a hotter read in the quarterly reading that we've just got than expected. But of course, that hasn't materialised, and it does look as though inflation is trending down sustainably on that underlying measure in the target band, getting toward that midpoint. So based on that, it is looking very likely that the Reserve Bank will cut interest rates in August, although it's worth saying at her latest speech at the Annaka Foundation just recently, the tone of that conference, the speech that she delivered, was of a cautious cutter, one that didn't want to do that unless they were very certain that the data was going to match up. But I do have the Deputy Chief Economist at AMP, Diana Messina, standing by. Diana Messina, what does this data mean the RBA will do on the 12th of August when it meets on interest rates?
Hi, Alicia. Well, I have to say that I was pretty pleased with the numbers myself because we were looking for a 0.6% increase in the trimmed mean, which it came out at. And I think the annual rate of 2.7% really will demonstrate to the Reserve Bank that inflation is still trending down, that their forecasts are still intact, because we know that the Reserve Bank at its next meeting will also see the next update of the RBA's own forecasts. And for the Reserve Bank to be comfortable in cutting interest rates again, I think that the forecasts need to show that inflation is still going to be continually within the 2 to 3% target band. And I do think today's data confirms that. I haven't seen the components yet, but hopefully the components will also show that some of the key areas that the Reserve Bank was worried about, like consumer non-durable goods, goods products in general, and some of those non-dwelling construction costs, that those areas are showing some signs of not picking up to a large extent. That's really been a concern of the RBA, that it doesn't want to see a second round increase in inflation.
But of course, the focus for us at the moment is all on interest rates. And I mean, you said that the RBA made a mistake in July by not cutting interest rates. Does this data justify your position?
Look, I think it does. I mean, of course, I'm not on the board, so I can't say that. I can't necessarily speak for what was happening in the board meeting that day, and there were some dissenters to the decision to hold rates steady. But we did have the June employment data, which showed a 4.3% unemployment rate, and now we've got the June quarter inflation figures, which were smack on the RBA's forecast. So if we had all this information prior to that board meeting, I think that they would have cut rates. But, this is just, again, like Michelle Bullock said, a question of timing. And I suppose in context, it's only really a few weeks until the next board meeting. So it's not like this is the decision to not cut rates is going to dramatically make a big impact to the economy. I think it's more just a perception that the RBA was expected to cut rates and that homeowners were, looking for that rate cut. And it's just the perception to the market that perhaps the communication of the RBA is not like we would want it to be. I think that is some of the issues with the RBA's decision to defy market and consumer expectations for not cutting rates in July.
Well, market expectations, as I've just been looking while you were talking, have jumped from 80% chance of a rate cut in August to 93% now. Do you think that these numbers will mean the RBA cuts rates in a couple of weeks?
Well, I don't want to say that it's a done deal because I said that last time and I was proven wrong. But I think the hurdle to not cut rates again will be extremely high at this August meeting, given that they basically said they were just waiting for the confirmation of the inflation data for it to be in line with its expectations. So I find it really hard to see them not cutting rates in August, but I think that they will still discuss the possibility of holding rates steady and what that could potentially mean for the RBA's own growth and inflation forecasts. But I do think that we are likely to see a rate cut in August.